You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where this week we'll be flying through a load of cricket. We've got a recap of the third test between India and England. We've got a preview of the fourth test between India and England. And we've got some white ball action from New Zealand. And you know what? I think we might have time for a little bit of PSL as well. I'm Jack Hope. And as ever, I'm joined by Ed Sheeran impersonator, Max Rowe Brown. How are you doing?
Who's that? Yeah, very good. Max? Thank you, Jack. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. And Tim Payne impersonator, Ross Legg.
G'day, mate.
I have to say, in the comments, I get the Tim. I don't understand the Tim Payne impersonator bit.
No, I've always thought that Ross looked a bit like Marcus Alonso, but
yeah, okay. Let us know in the comments. I'm sure you will. Anyway, we are excited about the cricket, aren't we? It's because the game only lasted 2 days. It feels like we've had a little bit of a drought.
Yeah, we sort of had about the normal gap you'd get between test matches, which is obviously too long.
It is, yeah. I'm glad. I think they should up it. When the games end early, they should do something else. Before we get into the proper cricket, fellas, we've got our kind of pointless question of the week, the icebreaker, if you will. And this week it's birthday themed. Yesterday, the Cricket Podcast turned 2, which is an accomplishment. The longest we've ever stuck at a project, I'd say.
Yeah.
So my question to you two, start with you, Max. What cricket themed present would you like for your Cricket Podcast birthday?
Well, I'm afraid it's a bit of a serious answer, I suppose. Nothing too silly and jokey. I would like a bowling machine, and I will tell you why I would like a bowling machine. It's because it's getting sunny now, and we've just been told that we might be allowed out to play soon, and that's got me thinking about playing cricket and going to cricket nets. And for the club I play for, the frontline bowlers, one in particular, just doesn't actually believe in cricket nets as practice, but all the batsmen go to nets, so you generally end up with one bowler at the nets and then about 6 batsmen. Obviously the one bowler gets very tired after about 10 minutes because he's bowling a lot, and then you're just basically, when you go into bat, you're just playing really shit off spin for 15 minutes, and it's crap. So I'd like a bowling machine so I can face some proper bowling in the nets.
Good answer. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. Where are you going to store it? I mean, we know you're about to become a homeowner. Congratulations. Yeah. What does your girlfriend, soon-to-be fiance, and slightly less soon-to-be wife think about this?
She's not yet been informed.
Does that mean that a cricket net in the back garden is a possibility?
Well, you might have to. It's on a bit of a slope, so I might have to build up the back a bit. But it's certainly the right dimensions for a cricket net.
Yeah, fair enough. No, look, it never hurt Lord's slope, did it?
If different direction, that slope, though.
It's the main selling point. Ross Legg, what would you like for your Cricket Podcast, cricket birthday?
I'd quite like a bust made out of cricket balls. I think that'd be quite a bust of me. And someone has done the little leather cricket balls, and we can make a bust. That'd be quite a niche, weird present to get.
Cool.
Yeah.
Actually, that's so weird. It's knocked me.
Yeah, good. Or we had Jack Russell on the podcast way back when. I wouldn't mind one of his like a portrait of us 3 together. Like, I'm not gonna be one of those naff podcasts that has like a pencil drawing outline of 3 people. What you want is a proper artist who's kind of gone to town and done a portrait of all 3 of us.
We could commission that.
We could.
Yeah. Looking very regal in some whites. That'd be good.
Right. I would like an IPL franchise.
Toy money.
Aim high. But before we get into the rest of the show, Ross, do you have any messages for our listeners?
Yes, you should subscribe using the buttons, whether it's left or right on the screen, I don't know. And you should follow us on all podcast platforms as well as social media platforms, where you can find us at The Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
Perfecto. If you're watching on YouTube as well, smash that like button and leave us a comment. We might agree with you, we might argue with you, we might make fun of you, depending on my mood. And if you're listening to part 1 of the Cricket Podcast on YouTube, you can actually listen to the whole show in advance on Spotify or Apple or wherever, because we release the videos over 2 days, but the audio over 1. So, get ahead of your friends and head on over to Spotify and cross follow. Let's build a web of interconnectedness.
Yeah, someone's been reading about the Internet of Things.
We will be back after a short break. The third test between India and England then. We basically did 2 episodes on this already because we were doing a daily show. We encourage you, go back and listen to them or watch them if you want to catch our immediate reaction. But I think, right now we're going to go through some of the points in the game again, starting as ever with the Mac summary. Max, you want to talk us through what happened over days 1 and ultimately 2?
Yeah, it might be a slightly shorter summary than the normal for obvious reasons. India and England faced off under lights in Ahmedabad at the newly crowned Narendra Modi Stadium. Talk in the run-up to the game had been dominated by the likely conditions, the pitch, the potential danger of seam with the pink ball. But before things even got started, England fans were left a little concerned while England put all of their pink eggs in one basket by picking 3 seamers and seemingly no batsmen. India stuck with 3 spinners and recalled Washington Sundar to add some more batting. So 2 very different approaches there. One taken by the home team who knew what the pitch was going to be like. Things started well enough for England. We won the toss. That was good. Zach Crawley's 50 looked really nice. And Bumrah and Ishant definitely got a bit of movement out the pink ball in the first 10 overs or so. So, yeah. All things considered, at the start, it looked promising for England, but 15 overs in, it all went very, very wrong and very quickly. The pink ball stopped moving, Axar and Ashwin came on, and then England were all out. And it happened about that quickly. It didn't improve in the evening either, because England's seamers tried to extract some life from the pitch and ultimately failed. 10 overs in, they could barely even stand up while they were trying to bowl. And England belatedly turned to Jack Leach, who confirmed everyone's suspicions by taking a couple of wickets, and everyone could see that England had got it badly, badly wrong. And India were 13 behind with 7 wickets in hand. So that was game over on day 1. And then in the second 40% of the game, enter Joe Rutalitharan, as he's now been called, who bamboozled the Indian batsman with his well-renowned world-class skill with off-spin and took 5 for 8 to drag England back into the game. But the hope was dashed as quickly as it returned. England found themselves 0 for 2 after 2 unplayable deliveries that went in a straight line. And England meekly limped to 81, allowing Rohit and Gill to knock off the remaining 49 runs with impudence, and everyone was home in time for tea. So, yeah, that left sort of England scratching their heads and Channel 4 wondering what they would need to do to fill 28 hours of programming.
About 400 episodes of 4 in a bed, I think is what they went with.
Come dine with me, Frasier.
Like how they feel every day. The key points I think we should probably touch on as talking points. The selection, England's avant-garde approach to selecting a team in India. The opportunities for England to actually win, because there were a couple, I think, in the match, and probably we'll have a little chat again about the pitch, although we did cover that on podcast 2 of the Daily Duo. Ross, England's selection, I think, if we're going to summarise it, they got it wrong, didn't they?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption to make, really. I think like England's rotation policy, I think, is ultimately admirable. I think they're trying to do the right thing, but there needs to be some questions around how they've actually deployed the resources they've had available during the whole of the winter, really. But my first question is kind of, in what world does a team get rolled for 134, then 166 with 8 batsmen and 3 number 11s, And then the leadership team of the team goes, do you know what? We're going to pick one fewer batsman and have another number 11. Like there's no real logic there for me. So what is difficult is that when we did the preview show, we said there was a couple of different options available to them, and we thought that, like most of the media and probably the most of the England team, based upon their selection, that the pink ball would move around and they'd get a bit more of a friendly pitch to play some seamers on. Fortunately, the media and us don't pick the team; it's the England management team. However, on this occasion, I think we would have done a better job.
Would we?
I don't know. I feel like in our preview podcast, we might have all come around to the argument of playing the longer tail and four seamers, because we were very much of the opinion, weren't we, of put all the eggs in one basket because it's the best chance we'd have of actually getting a result with the pink ball swinging.
I think that's basically right, Max. I think basically from England's perspective, if the ball span, if the pitch was going to be a spinner, they were going to lose if they, like, regardless of what they did. They could have picked 15 players, like someone else smuggled that past the match referee. Probably wouldn't have been that difficult based on some of the decisions in this.
Can we just have that camera angle? No, you just go past the 11th player.
But they actually did have a chance of winning, I think, if the ball moved. So I think that obviously in hindsight, it looks absolutely ridiculous to be bowled out twice. Haven't managed to score 200 runs in the match. The seamers barely bowled. They didn't bowl at all in the second innings. Joe Root is your second best bowler in the match. Well, best in terms of figures, but second best probably in terms of like the eye test. So it looks really stupid. But if England were going to have a chance of drawing or winning, basically one of the last two tests, surely their best hope was that inexplicably India effed up the pitch, and they got a little bit of help for Broad, Anderson, and Archer. No,
but so this is the bit that we're doing this 5,000 miles away. Like Chris Silverwood, Joe Root, they can see the pitch. They even practiced at the ground. You can't tell me that they're sitting there going, "Oh, do you know what? This Modi pitch is going to be absolutely brilliant."
They did say, didn't they? Some of the players while they were in warm-ups that it was hooping around corners.
Yeah, which is great, but at the same time, they still could just look at the pitch. Like it's going to be a thing. It's not going to be mad. But what I really like about this is, where is Ed Smith? And I know we had a bit we're in Australia and thinking about where's Rohit Sharma. Where is Ed Smith? Is he actually out there, or is he in kind of some opium den searching for a new way of doing some innovative selection? Because I'm really not sure what was going on in this case.
I don't know. I think in a sense it might have been worth the gamble from England's point of view, but I also think they were properly, as we said on the last podcast, they were properly duped by India in terms of it, like, you know, the pictures of the green seamer, Umesh Yadav being called up to the India.
That
India
for me
15.
was the last stroke, calling up Umesh Yadav, because obviously, I mean, you can put out a picture of a pitch 5 or 6 days out when it's not been mowed. It doesn't mean anything, does it? Because you haven't even decided how much grass you're going to leave on it. But saying, "Oh yeah, we're bringing Umesh Yadav back into the squad, see if he's fit." And just leaving that inkling of doubt there. I was like, oh, well, they actually might go for 3 seamers, because India do make a big thing about, you know, backing their seam attack, and they do have an absolutely phenomenal seam attack. And Umesh Yadav's his record in India is phenomenal. So it was.
Max,
really
you
well
said
done.
that for the past 5 years, England have been playing one big con on the England team of going, we've got a pretty good seam attack here. We're going. And it all came down to this crux moment, so they get to the World Test Championship final. Is that what you're saying?
That wasn't quite the angle I was going for. I was sort of focusing on the Umesh Yadav angle.
Yeah, it was a good trick. It was a good trick. I mean, it does lead to some questions, and they're not really big questions because it happens everywhere. But, you know, is it exactly right that because there's a way, there's sort of ways of looking at it. So I was listening to another podcast, an Indian podcast about this match, and one of the guys on it said India realised it was going to spin, and England didn't. And I think that's an interesting way of putting it, is all I'll say. So I don't know if India realised it was going to spin,
or knew from the very beginning that it was going to spin.
asked for it to spin. I mean, that's the only thing I'd say. I mean, it was, you know, England's selection. It was pretty funny, wasn't it? They probably got it wrong for that match.
Well, I've got one more bit on this. So England have a pretty decent history of picking and ruining a spinner in unfavourable bowling conditions. Um, are you surprised that they've not really given a new spinner a go? So regardless if they saw the pitch, I mean, Joe Root was standing next to the pitch where you could see that it was just dirt. So was there not ever a bit where they were just like, we don't have Moeen Ali, we don't trust Don Bess. So the likes of Parkinson, Crane, I think he's in the touring party, or Verdi could have been given a go. I mean,
I think that's a question for the next test.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe we should hold on to that
Yeah,
for
okay.
some content for later in the show. I think at 1-1, to be honest, England were entitled to take the gamble. It probably was a really dumb gamble.
Yeah.
In that, we're talking like 20-1 odds that that it turns out all of the evidence that you're being presented with is wrong. But like England, they're probably 50-1 on a spinning wicket at the moment, aren't they? So, worth a go. England did lose. We're talking about it like it was a bit of an inevitability.
Mm.
I think at least one time in the match, they actually did have a chance. 74 for 2 on day one, and Joe Root said this in his presser after the game. To go from 74 for 2 to 112 all out. Did they blow it?
Well, I think you can't say that a team that went from 74 for 2 to 112 all out didn't kind of mess up a little bit at some stage. I mean, whatever the hell is going on, whatever game you're playing, any other, everything else aside, that is a bizarre, a bizarre occurrence, especially when you had at that time Zach Crawley looking really, really well set, looking really good. Joe Root was in, England's best player of spin, and we had people to come like Ben Stokes, who we know all about, and I wouldn't say we were in that strong a position because of sort of in terms of a general game of cricket, like 74 for 2 after you've won the toss and chosen to bat isn't setting the world alight, but in the context of what ended up happening, actually it wasn't a bad spot to be in, and a lot of the wickets that we did lose, you would say, weren't exactly examples of high quality cricket. It seems like Ben Stokes only needs to be shown a picture of Ravi Ashwin at the moment, and it'll all come tumbling down around him. So definitely some blame on the part of England there.
Yeah, I do think that was really, in my mind, the main opportunity that England had, and I think possibly looking back on the game, 74 for 2, they were probably ahead of par. Like they might have actually been favourites in hindsight, if that makes sense.
Well, everything was coming out the middle of Crawley's bat. He couldn't do anything wrong, could he? He was absolutely hooning it to the boundary. It looked great.
Yeah, as you said on that show, though, you wonder if him smacking Ishant out of the attack basically preempted or precipitated the disaster that was to come. Obviously, I mean, there's not really much to add, is there? Besides saying, losing 8 for 38 to throw that away.
I think there's probably a mental aspect to that collapse. In that at 74 for 2 now, we can sit there and say, yeah, look, England were actually in a really good position based on what we saw happen. But at the time, you're 74 for 2, and this you sort of, a couple of batsmen have struggled, and you've lost Bairstow for nothing, and you've lost a review along with it, and you think actually some not panic, but some concern would set in the England team, and then when another couple fall, it does sort of build up. Whereas actually, if they were able to have the benefit of hindsight and know what the game was going to turn out like, they might have applied themselves in a slightly different way. But
so I read a couple of articles, actually, one on ESPN, I think by Ian Chappell, and the other one on The Guardian from VVS Laxman, and an interview that he did about playing spin. And I thought it was really interesting to kind of just see how how his approach and how he was talking it through around where you position your bat and playing back to the bowl or back to mid-off, whereas England's technique, their scoring shot looked to be the sweep shot. They weren't moving their feet and they were playing to cover, and that was where all kind of the issues were. And it's quite interesting to see. I mean, we've got Marcus Trescothick, who not a bad player of spin, plays at Somerset as the batting coach. Jeter Patel, obviously the spin bowling coach, can offer some advice. England just don't look set up for success in any which way to bat against the spin.
Well, no, I think what you've basically nailed there, Ross, is England's main problem. So if you want to get nerdy about it, England are quite good against the spin when you're able to sweep. As it happens, the speed that Axel Patel in particularly bowls at makes the sweep a really, really high risk shot. The Cricket Viz did one of their things where they're like, when the ball is bowled slower than 90k per hour, the sweep average is 80. When it's bowled faster than 90k per hour, it averages 20. And
it's quite an unwieldy
Patel,
shot to get into, isn't it?
Yeah, and Axel Patel bowls basically a bit too quickly for that. Add in the problem that the ball was not going in the same place. Despite bouncing in the same place. The sweep, you kind of wrote off England's only or main attacking shot. Anything else to add? I mean, the other time in the game England maybe thought they had a chance is when they fought back to bowl India out for just 145, and they were only 33 behind going into the third innings. Could they have won from there, or was that lead of 33 just too much for the Three Lions to overcome, Ross?
My favourite thing about that moment was just the air of inevitability when
what was coming next.
The roller coaster of being an England fan then, and probably being an India fan. You were just like, this is amazing. Oh my god, this is absolutely terrible. And then when Crawley got out for the first ball of the innings, it was just like, oh god, don't worry, we've got another. Oh no, it's Johnny Bairstow coming in. Oh, and he was out. What, 2 balls later? It was a pretty shoddy thing to happen. I did like our Shane Warne's suggestion of completely changing up the batting lineup. What would that have helped with, Shane? Like, what big brain are you using to go? Oh, do you know what? Send in Broad to open up.
I actually did say, I think, in one WhatsApp chat that we should just send in Ben Stokes for the first to open and just be like, you know what, he might be able to burgle a pinch hitting 30, and then suddenly we're on par and we're in with the shout. I mean, I think the 33 run deficit was somewhat larger than obviously the number itself suggested, when you bear in mind that it was over 25% of the runs we scored in the first innings, and it was probably on another day probably more like a lead of 80 or 100.
Yeah. I think that's a massive exaggeration, to be honest. 33 runs is like, it was a difficult wicket to bat on, but if you're 33 runs behind, I think you can, at most, you can say that you can charge a double tax to runs.
What's an average score in the first innings of a Test match?
It's about 300, maybe a bit less. I think batters around the world average about 300,
and we got just over a third of that.
Yeah, so I'm saying if you play, but I think in this match runs are worth about double. So 112 is not a good score on this pitch.
66, 80. It's not that much different, is it? The point stands.
But there's a big difference in 100, and I think from there, England really needed. They had the opportunity to. They only needed to be. If they got 100 ahead, they were in a good position, and they were unable to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of that is to do with the pitch. A lot of that is to do with some pretty poor batting, isn't it?
I think also kudos needs to be given to the Indian team. They played really well, I thought. The Axar bowled really well, Ashwin bowled really well. And regardless if the pitch is made for you or not made for you, you've still got to do it. And then the way in which Rohit Sharma and Gill came out in the second innings, I think we tweeted it about an hour before it happened, and we were always going to lose by 10 wickets in that scenario. I thought they were brilliant.
Yeah, I don't think you can really talk that much about the final innings. I mean, like, England knew they'd lost. Joe Root opened the bowling in a Test match. No one's really set up for that. I think
you are right to credit India, Ross, because they did again outplay England in pretty much all aspects, apart from their part-time spin.
Right, so that brings us to sort of the last of the talking points that we're going to have before we really get rid of this test. And we're going to talk about the pitch a little bit, but probably from a different angle, I think, because we did talk about the pitch for 20 minutes or so on the last show. And it was pretty funny, wasn't it? to be honest, like the combination of that wicket with like the plastic pink ball did lead to some sort of hilarious stuff going on. I think we sent around a tweet from Hawkeye that Jared Kimber had shared of an Ashwin over where all the balls bouncing about the same place, and one went past Joe Root's head, one hit middle stump, two span miles down the leg side, and two slid straight on. It was at that point in the game, it was about as close to unplayable as I think you could get.
And before you get into the pitch, Jack, how much of that do you think was the pink ball aspect? Because I don't in terms of like compared to Chennai, I don't think the pitch was worse than that at all. And I do feel like the pink ball with how it slid on did add sort of just enough extra peril to make it that much more difficult to play.
Well, I think it's a combination thing, isn't it? It's the pitch was bad because they prepared a wicket that didn't take into account that they were going to be using a pink plastic ball. There's like guidelines Ross was talking about that you're supposed to have a certain amount of grass on the wicket. You generally want it to look. You need to do a little bit more to make the ball interact with that wicket like a regular red ball. You can't just roll out a spinner as we've seen, the spinning wicket as we've seen. Like probably a pitch that would have gone to like day 4 with a red ball. Well, like I don't think it was as bad as the Chennai one. It wasn't going through the top of the wicket. The bounce was reasonably consistent when it didn't hit the lacquer. But we were playing with a pink ball, and that makes it a bad pitch. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
because you need about 7 feet of grass to make it actually the pink ball worthy.
And what I thought actually was quite interesting was the debate around the pitch. I don't know if any of you, either of you two, have been sort of looking at any of that on the line, as they say.
I've seen a lot of.
I just love them.
I've seen a lot of the Twitter army getting their knickers in a twist, which has been quite good fun. I've sort of kind of switched off from what the actual journalists are saying because they all seem to have very similar opinions. But I do enjoy the furore on Twitter. It's good as a good battle going on.
It's just very cricket, isn't it? I just absolutely love the fact that there were still 2 innings worth of cricket played, and no one is talking about that. It is focused on the pitch of something that, I find it thoroughly amusing.
Yeah, well, I think that probably the reason for it, and I think the reason why I found it interesting is that, when we talk about cricket on the Cricket Podcast, normally the angles we look for when we tell the stories are ones related to the human factor. They're not so much about numbers. We're not like reviewing players out of 10 or whatever. We want to tell each other and talk about the emotional moments of the cricket match. And I think what's interesting in this one is that most of the emotional moments in the cricket match happened after the cricket match on the internet. The actual discussion of whether the pitch was suitable or not has been way more interesting than what probably it's a 10-wicket win, a bit of a hammering for one of the teams, and the cricket itself wasn't that great because nobody knew what they were doing. I don't know if you caught, to sort of kick this off, I don't know if you caught the sort of grand prince of cricketing thought, Ravichandran Ashwin's exchange with that journalist. Did you see that, Max?
I did, yes. So basically, the journalist asked him what he thought of the pitch and whether he'd like to see a similar pitch in the next test. And Ashwin shot back, being like, well, let me ask you a question. Who decides what a good pitch is? And if the journalist had done any of his research, he would have been able to then go back to Ravi Ashwin and say, well, the ICC does, and here are the guidelines, rather than making Ashwin look like some genius who's tied him in knots. But actually, the question Ravi Ashwin asked was completely answerable and in no way answers any questions. But it's very easy to sit there from the position of someone who is a world-class bowler and is bowling on a pitch that helps him out quite a lot.
See, I think, Max, and I think this is why the pitch and the whole debate around the pitch has been so interesting, because it's what this pitch is a perfect reflection of the type of cricket fan you are. So what you've done there is, when you've been asked, like, is this pitch good? You've immediately gone to the rule book, because that, at the end of the day, is the kind of cricket fan you are. You're a guy who likes the rules. You like things being the way they should be. Ashwin, I mean, the point he's making there, I wasn't really sure whether he was making this like clever postmodernist point, i.e., that there's no objective truth in the
What
world.
even is a pitch?
Yeah, what exactly, Max? Yeah, or maybe he's being a cricketing Marxist and sort of making this point that I guess the perception of what a good cricketing pitch is defined by England fans and Australian fans, and it is a Western-centric idea, and that the rising power of India is now in a position to take ownership of that discussion.
They're coming for Max's rule book. That's what they're coming for.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, Max, kind of like you alluded to, it was probably it was just Ashwin talking about saying that the pitch was quite good because he's a professional sportsman.
Rohit's also done it, and Kohli's also done it. It's the theme from the Indian camp is that the pitch was absolutely fine, which I find a little disingenuous, but Yeah,
and also, I mean, from Ashwin's point of view, he's just taking his 400th wicket. He doesn't want that undermined.
No, that's true. That is
does
true.
He?
It's anyway, still a phenomenal achievement.
Just to run through, because I did some of the perspectives, and then we'll call it a day. There have been some good ones. First of all, the England diehard fans, they've been saying the India cheated.
No, get in the bin. Come on.
There's no black and white, is there, at all? It is literally just, if England lose, someone else is cheating.
That's it's very hard to make what's basically a living organism.
Ridiculous take.
Do what you want. I think India prepared it like that, but they cheat. No. And then on the other hand, you've got the diehard India fans who tell you one combination of England can't bat, and this is just how pitches are in India. Both of which are pretty disingenuous as well, I would say. England scored 578 2 tests ago. That's granted, completely different circumstances, but that's not a team that can't bat. This England team can actually bat. Sorry, Ross?
It's also those fans who are pretty much just saying that they're not Test cricket fans. They're just like, it's completely reasonable that a Test finished within a day and a half. That's just not a reasonable place to be.
Some people were saying, "Is this good for Test cricket? It's more exciting." It's like, no, it's not.
Well, see,
because it makes people go, "Well, why do you need 5 days if you can do it in 2?" And then Test cricket dies.
You're just getting a reflection of what you want out of the pitch. Because what you are then, Max, and I've got these all written down. You're coming from the position of like a cricket lover. I just want a good game. The game should last the length that a normal. Test
it doesn't have to go 5
So
days, but you can't say that some of the best moments in cricket haven't been those ones that have gone down to the wire. Like those tight wins you've got, and it just builds, doesn't it? It's the whole point of the long form of the game. Is there are so many moments where it ebbs and flows, and the pressure builds. It's nip and tuck until that final moment where the ultimate result is decided. And what we got was basically like a 2020 version of Test cricket.
Yeah, well, you say that, Max. I think that if you put that on the internet, somebody would retort to you from the cricketing progressives camp, because what you have, that's my doorbell, what you have described there, Max, is a cricketing conservative point of view. You're to rip off Edmund Burke, you're talking about cricket from the point of view of a game that we're just sort of the custodians of as the living. Like Test cricket, it's not a game for the dead. It's not a game for the living. It's not a game for the people who are yet to be born. It's a holistic thing that we take care of and pass on to the next generation. A cricketing progressive, they come at you and they would say you're wrong. This is completely fine. Just because that's how things were doesn't mean that's how things should be.
I mean, the traditionalistic fallacy is a real thing, and I totally take the argument that just because something is a certain way doesn't necessarily mean it should remain that way. But the cricketing progressives gave us the 100, so that would be my response.
Which I'm a big fan of the 100.
I also think the cricketing progressives are coming at it from a really half-baked intellectual point of view. Half of them, in my opinion, they're sycophantic panderers to the BCCI, the Indian public, or both, and have developed that kind of justification just because they're really desperate.
Mental gymnastics.
Yeah, and then some of them are fundamentally good, and they are progressive people in normal life. But instead of applying that progressive tendency to people and making the world a better place, they've applied it to some dirt in India. They're just severely confused. Anyway, I'm not going to labour this point anymore. I just thought it was really interesting, all these different ideas that were floating around based on some dirt. And like, basically, I'm going to forget what happened in this cricket match. Probably already forgotten most of it. Ollie Pope being bowled by Ashwin twice is the only thing I think I might remember beyond sort of next week, because that was absolute mastery, particularly in the second innings. But beyond that, who cares?
Well, the England team have done a very good job of stonewalling it for all the noise that's been created by journalists and the usual ex-cricketers and the gang. We should probably come up with a name for them at some point. But the England team, despite some of what you might have picked up on the stump mics, which was actually quite funny. I don't know if there was definitely a bit where there was an image of James Anderson who was probably mouthing "It's a fucking shithole," and I definitely heard either Ben Stokes or Stuart Broad say, "This is day one. What an absolute joke." And Stuart Broad did ask the umpire if they could put some concrete in the pitch at one point when they got the basher out. But that aside, the England team haven't really been. There were a couple of maybe minor comments, but they haven't really been complaining about the pitch at all. They've owned the fact that they probably didn't bat very well. Jack Leach, even as recently as today, said that India outplayed us and we need to be better. And I think from the English team's point of view, that's the right mental attitude to have, and perhaps some of the journalists should sort of maybe just take a moment to read what the England players are actually saying, and let them make the decision, because they, at the end of the day, did play on the pitch.
Right, I think that's a good point to draw a line under the third test. If we're all agreed, should we take a quick break and then come back with a little preview of Test 4?
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.